Okay. Well, according to this, we are live. So welcome. We'll go ahead and give a minute for anyone to jump on that wants to view. Let me see, make sure I have this. Let me give you a couple of announcements for the church folk. If anyone joining in. Hold on. What is going on with my phone? Too much stuff. Like a well-oiled machine. Here we go. Turn that down.
Was that the Smurfs theme that you were singing just a minute ago?
That was just random da-da-das.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
It may have been the Smurf theme. I lived a very debauched and depraved childhood. My parents let me watch evil TV shows like Smurfs.
Yeah.
So, that's how that goes.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's go ahead and jump into it. For those who do not know, I am Pastor Marc Lambert. This is primarily done for the sake of the congregation at Liberty Hill Baptist Church. However, I love the idea that this little church in Moody, Texas can reach the world with the message of the gospel. And so anyone is always welcome to join in. This is the on-the-spot question and answer where we respond to questions on the spot. No rehearsal, no preparation. We get to just, you make up the questions, we will make up the answers, and hopefully everything will work out fine. Because as Christians, doubt is not something we should be afraid of. In the Bible, faith is not blind. God is not scared of our seeking answers. And so whether it is doubts and questions we personally have, challenges from those outside, or just curiosities that we happen to come across, it's good that we seek answers. And so that's what this event is about. That's what we seek to do, is to help pursue answers regarding the faith. And so let me just go ahead and we'll go around and introduce. I'm Mark, pastor here at Liberty Hill Baptist Church. I have my degree in theology, and I just love trying to help people find answers to their questions and doubts and preaching the gospel. Have a beautiful wife and 3 beautiful little girls, one which is not quite so little anymore. I'm wrestling with that, and am so incredibly blessed with all my life has going on, even with the hard stuff. So just glad to take the grace that I've been given by God and spread it to others. And so this man to my left, Brother Dave.
I'm Dave Dover, lifelong friend of everybody here so far, and college minister X for, I'd say, 15 years, and at-large pastor, whatever you need. Okay?
Patrick, go ahead. Let us know.
Okay, I don't know. Sorry, I didn't know what circular order we were going in.
Yeah, no worries.
Patrick Chaney, former Methodist pastor, father of 2, husband of 1. That's important. And just glad to be here. Got my degree from Southern Methodist University, particularly in systematic theology, focusing. My personal interest was the Trinity. We had to focus on all of it, but so glad to be here tonight. Hope to sit and reason with you all as we discuss questions of our faith.
Yeah, and my name is Clinton Wilcox. I am not a pastor, but I am a pro-life advocate. I do work in bioethics, giving talks and presentations, and I write, and I've been published in a peer-reviewed journal, things like that. And so I don't have a college degree, but I do have the requisite education, so to speak. And I actually live here in bright, sunny California, where we've been reaching triple degrees, and we are going to be a lot hotter this next week too. So definitely staying inside, getting the air conditioner. And I'm really glad that Mark and his church is doing this. I think it's a really great thing, and I appreciate him inviting me on to come and answer some questions. And I'm really glad to God that we live in a time in which it's possible to be quarantined at home and yet still able to meet on a basis with the internet and websites like StreamYard. So I think it's a really great time that we're living in.
Okay.
So I think it's a really great time.
All right. I'll also mention, let's go ahead and just give a plug for the gang. Clinton and I are also members of an apologetics network called The Mentionables. You can check them out at thementionables.org. Don't mess up that web address. It'll get you somewhere you don't want to go. Thementionables.org. Good stuff going on over there. One thing I want to say, Clinton, you know, you may say you don't have a college degree, but man, you definitely put in the legwork of self-education, because you know quite a bit about a very complex issue. And so,
well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. If anyone has a question that they would like to submit, there is, of course, the live chat feature in YouTube. We also have on the church's website, lhbcmoody.org. That's lhbcmoody.org. You'll find the page for this event, and there's actually a submission form where you can submit your questions through there, because I know not everybody has a YouTube account. And so you're able to do that. Any church members want to submit any questions, of course, if you have my phone number or email, you can do that direct. But that is how we have this going on today. Hopefully we'll have some good times, some fun going on. And so we've got a few people watching. Let's go ahead and get into, did have some questions that were submitted in advance from some people who weren't going to be able to give a question tonight, but they wanted to make sure it got in there. So if Dave will hand me my sheet back, I can get us rolling with a question that was submitted by someone in advance. And this one, I think, is going to be kind of interesting. This actually comes from our youth minister, James. I'll just go ahead and throw him under the bus there. He loves to push back and give some fun questions. Lately, on Sunday mornings, we're preaching through the gospel. Just all four merged, harmonized gospel story of Jesus. And we've just been through the crucifixion. You know, we just got through the empty tomb. And one thing that kept coming up over and over again was that Jesus was not a victim. Right? He says, "I don't lay down. No one takes my life from me. I lay it down." Right? And as you know, second person of the Trinity, I mean, he, you know, like he told Peter, "Don't you think I could call down, you know, legions of angels and stop this if I wanted to?" Right? And so the idea that Jesus is in control. So here's the question: says, if Jesus was in control, did he commit suicide then? Like suicide by cop, kind of a suicide? Like, you know, you just stop treading water in the ocean, allow yourself to drown kind of suicide? So let's, I'll see what you guys have to say, and then I can correct anything if you get it wrong.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually a criticism that I occasionally hear from atheists, in that Jesus was essentially committing suicide on the cross if all of this was kind of preordained. And I guess the way that I would respond to a charge like this is just to say that there's a difference between suicide and sacrifice. And what Jesus was doing was a sacrifice. It wasn't a suicide. It wasn't, you know, Jesus was severely depressed or just, you know, unsatisfied with the way things were going and just wanted to end his life. But he had an actual purpose for going to the cross. It was because we are all sinners and none of us can save ourselves. And so Jesus had to take the punishment that we deserved on himself at the cross. And so just kind of in a nutshell, I would say that this was a sacrifice, not a suicide. And suicide is morally impermissible, but sacrifice is not only morally permissible, but it's morally heroic. It's something you do for the benefit of others. It's not, you know, it's not something that you do as a selfish act because you're unsatisfied with something.
Yeah, I would say that Jesus says there's no greater love than that one man lay down his life for the other. And there's definitely a difference in someone laying down their life for the other than taking their own life. So the analogy of, and I don't know if he said this or if you threw that in there, where you're swimming and so you just decide to quit paddling your feet so you drown. That's still an act of the will where you are choosing not to paddle your feet, knowing you will die. It's different than Jesus knowing that others will kill him for our sake. So there's definitions and vocabulary matters here. There's a difference in an altruistic act and a selfless act. And even the cross wasn't an altruistic act where he was concerned just for our goodness, that he was concerned for our good, but it was much more than that. It was a selfless act of him giving himself up for our sake. But just on the definition of suicide where you take your own life, Jesus didn't take his own life. Laying your life down is not the same as taking your own life. Rome took his life. The Philistines and the Sadducees took his life. They were the ones yelling, "Crucify him." He went as a lamb to the cross, an innocent man. And so, I would say that a better comparison would be something like Maximilian Kolbe, who took Jewish people's place in the concentration camp to go into the gas chamber. He knew he was going to die, but he didn't do that himself. He laid down his life so someone else could live. And that's how we view Christ's act on the cross is, yes, he laid down his life because he is in control, and he laid it down fully as God and as man, 100% both, but he didn't kill himself. Other people killed him. He didn't nail himself to the cross. Roman centurions nailed himself to the cross. And so I would put it in that vein of no greater love. He laid down his life for our sake, but he didn't take his own life. Our sin took his life. Our fallen world took his life. That's why Paul says he was crucified from the foundations of the world.
Dave, you anything to add?
I don't have anything to add. I totally agree with what you guys already said. He chose to accept this demise, but he did not pull the trigger. Others pulled the trigger, and he knew it was going to happen. And the reason why that I believe that he went through it is because he knew the end result his blood would be a covering for us. And that would allow us to have communion with the Father. Without that, we would still be lost in having sacrifices. And he became the final sacrifice for us, the atonement.
Okay. Absolutely. Don't think anything more I can add to that. All right.
I would say popped into my head, a quick definition to help differentiate between the two would be self-murder versus self-sacrifice. Those aren't the same.
Right. And I think as Clinton touched on, the motivation for the different acts also, that this wasn't something he was just saying, where it was just about him I'm going to end my life just for the sake of ending my life.
Right.
That the act had what was for something else. And so, okay. Good. All right. I see we've got some folks' comments. Let me go ahead and just remind people, if you have a question you would like us to address, this is for the purpose of answering your questions. Not that we have all the answers. However, maybe if we don't have one, we can point you to one.
If we don't have the answer, we can just make it up.
Yes. I am a preacher, so I'm very good at making up things that just sound well. I'm just kidding. Dave is my mentor. He has taught me well. That we as Christians, we wrestle through this stuff, and it's okay to wrestle. It's okay to have doubts. It's okay to question. It's okay to struggle. I'm constantly floored by the number of people I encounter who their experience in church was the idea that you're not supposed to question. And
right.
So that's what we aim to do here. That's the whole reason for this event is give you a place to, our combined educations and experience is at your disposal to hopefully we could shed a little insight. And so if there's a question, again, we've had a few more people tune in. You can put it there in the comments of the live chat on YouTube, or if you do not have a YouTube, if you don't have a YouTube account, you can go to the church's website, and there's a form you can submit there. I'm going to see if I can throw that up on the screen for anyone.
Oops, I'm on the mic.
Nope.
What Carl put on there is right up there. You can't commit suicide if you're in obedience to the Father. So that second question there, that's all new information to me. I missed all that in my education. If you go down that road.
We will get to that in just a second. There you go. That is the church's website, lhbcmoody.org. On there, you will find a form where you can submit a question through that as well. So.
And if they have questions and they're watching this live stream, they can just post it in the comments too, right?
Right. I do know there are a few members of the church who don't actually have YouTube accounts, and you have to be logged in and everything to be in the live chat. And so I offer that just in case anyone can't do that in the live chat. So
okay, gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess because I'm not seeing the question, so I don't know what y'all are talking about.
Yeah, I had a few that were submitted beforehand, and Dave was rambling about that. Question, Clinton, remind me your denominational affiliation.
I am Lutheran.
You are Lutheran.
Raised,
Good.
raised Southern Baptist, but I'm Lutheran now, which means that I can drink alcohol.
Well, Southern Baptists can drink alcohol. We just can't talk about it.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
As long as we do it in secret, don't let anybody know.
Right. Okay, that's true.
Because of these, we can go buy.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Right. This is the perfect
Now we're allowed to go buy it.
Right.
You know, what's that? Where you find 4 Southern Baptist deacons, you'll find a 5th?
Always, yeah.
Okay. Well, then let's go ahead and jump on another question that was submitted.
That one took me a moment to get.
No. I'm not sure how much you know of the history of your denomination. Let me go ahead and read this question. Regarding Martin Luther and his views of the Jews, are y'all aware of his views towards Jews? And if so, how do you reconcile them to his otherwise priceless leadership? I've held this man up as a hero and leader to my children, and am shocked at his recommendations and apparent dislike of Jews. Is this true?
Well, I guess I could field this one first, since I'm a Lutheran, I guess. Now, I haven't read too much on Martin Luther. Being that I was raised Southern Baptist most of my life, I was aware of Martin Luther as the reformer. A little known fact about Martin Luther, though, is that he actually retained most of his Catholic views after leaving the church. When he nailed the 95 Theses onto the door in that church in Wittenberg, it was primarily about the Catholic Church's teachings on indulgences. That was his primary beef with the Catholic Church. So I do know a bit about Martin Luther. Not too well read on Luther, even though now I'm a Lutheran myself. I have heard about his extreme anti-Semitism. And so when there's a teacher with a really, really bad view like that, this has actually come up a lot recently with the riots and trying to tear down all the southern statues from the I'm blanking on the term. What do they call the southern states back in the Civil War era? It was it starts with a C. Confederacy, thank you. Where they're trying to tear down the Confederate statues because they were fighting for slavery and these kinds of things, negating all the good things that they did. And the way that I think about someone like Martin Luther, who had his extreme anti-Semitism, is, there are things about me that some people would probably find pretty bad. Even in the pro-life field, like I support capital punishment, and a lot of people think that I'm obscene because I believe that a convicted murderer, it's permissible to put him to death for his crimes. So even about me, someone who's a committed Christian, you could probably find things about me that you might find detestable if you're that emotionally attached to your views. So for someone like that, I say we just offer grace. Martin Luther King Jr., one of the greatest civil rights activists, was actually an adulterer. So if we're going to negate the good that someone does because of some extreme character flaw, then I don't really know if there's really anyone in history that we can remember fondly. So I would just say, if we're going to remember someone like Martin Luther, who had such a major impact on the church, don't necessarily forget the bad that he's done, because we want to make sure we recognize that it's bad. We want to avoid that behavior in our own lives, but I don't think that's necessarily that necessarily means that we can't remember that person for the good things that he's done. That would probably be my answer in a nutshell.
Good. Did you have something to add? You were jotting down over there.
Yeah, I did a quick read on Google real quick about it because I was unaware of this part of his life. But again, it goes back to the same thing that me and Patrick have talked about over and over again, is that we're all flawed and that we all have worldviews that are different than somebody that makes us obtuse. And you read his arguments on there, he had some impersonal encounters to come up with those views. And that's why he espoused them so much. It's more than obvious. But his views are because he viewed him as a cult. And if you read a guy, and I hope I'm quoting it correctly, Madison, who wrote a book about cults, he was very angry at some of those cults. He didn't think they should be around. But Luther said in this article I just read that we should kill them. I mean, it was like, oh my gosh. But so he has some anger issues. And that's why, Jesus died for us. We've all sinned. So on one hand, Luther did something good in his life, and then on the other hand, he didn't.
Yeah, I don't exactly know how to reconcile such a great church leader with someone who would hate the Jews, considering that the Jews, Christianity sprang from Judaism. Jesus was a Jew. The disciples were Jews. I don't know how a Christian could hate Jews personally, but, nevertheless.
My understanding is that, and it's been a while since I've read on any of this. My understanding is that his anti-Semitic views is something that developed later. Like a lot of the writings where he's, flat out saying, they're horrible, we need to kill them, kind of stuff, is as he's getting older, like in the last 4 or 5 years of his life, I've heard some people suppose that maybe he was getting senile even. He was just getting, getting old. And but I think it all comes back down to who of us is perfect? Not a single one.
Yeah.
There's Jesus, and then my wife comes pretty darn close, but other than that, ain't none of us perfect. And so,
you mean Molly?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I missed that world. Yeah.
Okay.
Is your anniversary coming up or something?
Yeah, there you go. I think so. Yeah.
Birthday's next week.
Okay.
But it's the same thing. Y'all have echoed that no one's perfect. And you can have someone who is a leader, who is respected, who is upheld for something they did, regardless of something else in their life that they got horribly wrong. And I think that as Christians, right, who is it that we're supposed to emulate? Who is it that we're supposed to hold up as our hero and our model? Well, it's Jesus, right? We do influence each other, and but we shouldn't engage in hero worship of other human beings, right? So that, because we all know we're all be flawed, we all know we're going to have problems, and it's so easy went to say, well, I don't see how anyone who's Christian could. Well, I do, because I know the wickedness and the darkness that's in my own heart. So of course I can see someone who could, buy into and get fooled by and, all kinds of dark and misleading things.
One of his things that he said was, for years, Mark may remember this, that if they don't choose Jesus, if they don't choose Christianity, then people would ask me, what would be your evangelical model? And I would be like, well, it'll be easy. Pull out the gun and tell them to go to hell and pull the trigger. And because I didn't choose Jesus. So if you don't choose Jesus, die and go to hell now. Let's end the argument. If you read the article that Martin Luther wrote, his argument was, if they won't choose God, let them die. So he came to some sort of realization that if they're not going to repent and they're not going to follow God, well, then they should die. In the argument. And I was like, oh my gosh. But you read it on there, he really goes into great detail and language of his time of why he didn't like them. And that's a different worldview for me. So,
well, and the world Martin Luther was in, I mean, you stop and think about it. That was some brutal stuff. Protestant versus Catholic, different sects of Protestantism. I mean, this is where, that we're burning people at the stake and chopping heads off. And not to say, that was okay, but to just understand the context of a life that would put someone in a frame of mind like that. But again, I think, what I was trying to say before is about, it's not about, the person. You look at what they did. You look at the idea that they were defending, and you focus on that, on the accomplishment of truth being put forth and overcoming falsehood, and you celebrate that. You don't necessarily celebrate the man, because, again, we're all flawed. We all have sin. We all have our problems. So, okay. All right. Let's see. I don't want to just barrel through things. I want to remind people, anyone, because the number kind of keeps fluctuating on who we got viewing, questions can be submitted there in the live chat, or also on the church's website. There is a form. You can go find the Q&A page for this event, and there's a form there if you can't do it on YouTube. Otherwise, you can drop it in the comments. We'd love to have your questions. So, okay. I do have two more that were submitted in advance. Of course, a lot of the fun is whenever you throw us a curveball and we just get it out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So please feel free to submit some questions, folks. Okay. We got one about the women folk. So let's ask our question about women. What were women's roles in Old Testament sacrifices? Did they ever participate, and were they covered by husbands' or fathers' sacrifices? And what about widows?
I don't think Christians ever sacrificed women, did we?
Not about women being sacrificed.
Oh, okay. Okay, gotcha. Sorry.
About women participating in the giving of sacrifices.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So, yeah.
It's a little ambiguously worded, so.
Yeah. Sacrificing women. No, I don't think that's anything that biblically ever went on, at least not that satisfied God. I'm sure some people did it and received judgment for it.
Clinton's going to get us banned from YouTube.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh. Yeah, this is not an area that I'm very knowledgeable in, so I'll kick the question over to you guys.
Patrick,
I wouldn't say I'm very knowledgeable either. I mean, just from my understanding, I believe they could participate as much as any man who wasn't a priest could, as far as bringing an animal. But when it came to getting it on the altar and doing the religious ceremony, it was the high priest and the priest that carried it out. I mean, the temple itself was divided into the holy place and the holies of holies, and not just anybody could enter that, man or woman. So I'd be willing to bet also that the widow aspect, I don't know that happened because of how the marriage laws was set up, where if, you had your kinsman redeemer, if your husband died, then a brother or somebody was supposed to marry you, because that's how their society was set up. And so I don't know that there was many widows unless they were very old. And I would just, this is as much a guess of anything, but I would guess that a woman could bring a sacrifice to the temple and then hand it over to the priest, like everybody else in Israel did, because only the priests could perform the religious ceremonies. So that would be my educated, non-educated guess on how it was taken.
Yeah, that's pretty much my understanding too.
I was right about one of them in my head, and I just found it, but there were two other roles, and I haven't read enough to figure that one out because I never thought about it either. If you remember right, when the priest went to make a sacrifice once a year, he had a rope tied around his foot, and at the bottom of his garment he had bells. So because if the bells were ringing, that means he was still alive, and if the bells weren't ringing, of course, then he had sinned, and God struck him dead then. The first thing that came to mind when I read the question, because my wife sews, my mother-in-law sews, I kept thinking, well, who sews those bells on? And then there's a book right here written that says that's what the girls do, and that's how they supported this. And it's a really this is a Jewish book written. I don't know what year it was, but it lists their roles, but it's not ABC. You have to keep reading. So that was the first thing that was confirmed. I didn't find out whether or not they've made a sacrifice yet. I have to read it a little faster. I don't know who's coming with these questions, but I wish I would have got an email on them. Then I could read ahead of time and have knowledge. I'm learning right this second. See the smoke?
Yeah, man. How many preachers do you think we'd have today if they had that stringent requirement to be without sin whenever they took the pulpit?
Yeah. Wow.
Or they
got a job.
Yeah.
Had to be without sin to take the pulpit. I said I'd be without a job. That's one of the great things that is just a blessing, that I'm able to be such a wonderful example to my congregation of an imperfect person following God imperfectly. Get to live out weakness and foolishness on a daily basis in front of them.
Right. Yeah.
So, this is one of those things that was kind of odd, and I mean, same thing y'all have already said, that just women weren't involved. It was the religious practice, right? That it was the priests who were doing it. So you came for whatever sacrifice was needed to be made, man or woman, for whatever the law provided, and that's what you brought. But the priests are actually the ones who did the sacrificing, right? You brought it, but they performed it. And so were there... Now that's interesting. It just occurred. I hadn't really read into it that the Levites, were there female Levites that were performing tasks and doing things in the temple and doing all that?
Well, this book that I'm reading right now, it's just like us. There's 20 questions that this woman asked that's just like us. Like, do I get to eat the meat that my husband eat? Do we get to chew the bones that they ate? I mean, it's just a bunch of questions. We're behind the times on asking questions. I mean, there's like, oh my gosh, this woman who wrote this thing asked questions back then that people were struggling with answering.
Okay. I think we've about answered that to the best of our knowledge and ability, unless we just sit here and wait for Dave to read something else. So.
Yeah. I mean, I never really thought about it, because as far as I do, there really weren't any different requirements for women as opposed to men. That they would take the sacrifices, and the priest would go in and sacrifice on the altar for everyone. So.
Okay. Well, let's shift gears just for a moment. I got a question that was sent in to me. Going to turn to more of a current event, cultural issues. And so here's the question. With this cancel culture movement, they specifically mentioned Black Lives Matters, the organization. Is Christianity next? So, culturally, right, the movement that's going on is, all sorts of things are getting put on the chopping block as being bad and horrible and need to get rid of, and so is Christianity next?
Well, it's already happening with Christianity. There are numerous examples we can point to. Some of them most recent, the state of Nevada, essentially, with the lockdowns going on and the quarantine with COVID-19 and everything, originally, churches and other institutions were temporarily shut down so that we could flatten the curve and make sure that there weren't more sick people than hospitals could care for and treat. And once the curve had sufficiently been flattened, then we needed to open the economy back up, because if we keep everything closed down, people are going to lose their jobs. There's not going to be any tax money coming in, all of these kinds of things, and that's going to wreck the economy. Not to mention the social effects on people, because you can't keep people isolated for too long, because we're wired for community. So just in the lockdowns alone, I've seen studies saying that there have been more suicides in the past few months than there have been in the past several years combined. So you can't just keep people isolated like this. So a very recent example of this kind of canceling churches is regarding Nevada, because they said that organizations like casinos can open up and have as many people in gambling there as they can fit, but churches can only meet with no more than 50 people. And so Calvary Chapel of Nevada took Nevada to the Supreme Court and said, look, they're violating the First Amendment by not allowing us to open to full capacity. And the Supreme Court, in a 5-4 decision, basically split. The liberal justices and Justice Roberts sided with Nevada against the churches, and the conservative justices sided with Calvary Chapel. So the Supreme Court, essentially by this 5-4 decision, said that Nevada is within their rights to limit church services, which of course is a violation of the First Amendment. And Neil Gorsuch, one of the conservative justices, wrote a very scathing 1-paragraph indictment of the Supreme Court's decision to side with Nevada as opposed to the churches, which is against the Constitution. So that's a very recent example, but we also see other examples with conservative business owners like Baronelle Stutzman, who I believe is from Oregon and runs a bakery. And then you have, I think she's a florist. And then you have a baker from Colorado who is a Christian and has been actually targeted by the left and by the Colorado government themselves, and they've had their hands slapped by the Supreme Court because they keep going after this baker whose name escaped me at the moment. And so these conservative business owners who are also Christians are being targeted by the left and even targeted by state governments because they refuse to participate in ceremonies like same-sex weddings and other things which oppose their deeply held convictions. We would say they're moral convictions, but in order to stand up for their rights, we have to call them religious convictions as well, because they have a religious right under the First Amendment to freedom of speech and to freedom of religion. So we actually do see now examples of Christian business owners, Christian churches who are essentially trying to, the left is essentially trying to cancel. So we're actually seeing a lot of examples of that now.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that. Was the question, is Christianity next or are churches next?
It specifically Christianity, but
I guess it doesn't matter. I was just wondering what the frame of. I would say it's Christianity now. You see, if you read any of the news, you see all the attacks on our Catholic brothers and sisters now, with the Junipero statues being ripped down, Jesus statues being defaced, one spray painted with hate. And I would suggest that those are the easiest targets because they're the most ornamental, but that doesn't mean that it won't eventually reach to the little white building that's a church that doesn't really look like a church except for the cross on top, because it'll eventually get there. And a Pew Research came out maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was reading, and I don't know about the Black Lives Matter thing. I found it odd that like 60% of the people protesting in the BLM movement were white. So this issue has nothing to do either, I don't think, with racial tensions. I think that there's a more nefarious thing going on. That's just me. I don't mean to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but I do believe that this is a battle of good versus evil, where it's not Democrat and Republican. That's not what I'm saying. I think it is good versus evil. And to fundamentally transform this nation, which was founded, its laws are founded on Judeo-Christian values, you eventually have to go after two things that are the foundation of our society, which is the family, which they've been doing for years, and now religion, specifically Christianity, because it is the most foundational of the religions in this nation. You just can't get away from that. I mean, Moses with the 10 Commandments is on the Supreme Court. You've got the 10 Commandments in our halls of Congress. You've got all kinds of religious statues where, it won't surprise me that those are taken down. It wasn't too many years ago that a judge in Alabama said, I'm not going to remove the 10 Commandments out of the courthouse, right? Where that fight was going on, whether you agree with it or not. I'm just saying that I think Christianity is now, and I'd like to also add that while I think it's a battle of good versus evil, ultimately, as Paul says, we fight not against flesh and blood. I think that that's good for the church. I think it's good. It will end up being good for us. The church was built on the blood of martyrs. Not that I'm wanting to die or have a wish to endure that type of persecution, but it's easy not to need God when you're in a society where everything's come so easy. And maybe it'll help us refocus on what's important. And maybe it'll help us refocus our faith and our commitment to Jesus Christ. The church always seems to explode in the places where there's the most persecution, which, by the way, is not America yet. I mean, look at China, look at the Middle East, look at the underground churches, look at Africa, and so I think it's Christianity now. I just think that it's being more open against Christianity in America today because of the cancel culture, because it's sort of in vogue to tear down statues. It's in vogue to deface things. It's in vogue to protest. It's in vogue to do these things. And it's easy to find that enemy. It's easy to find an enemy like Jesus Christ because he is so controversial to people that don't believe. He's so controversial in his stance. And I think in Scripture, or maybe Jesus himself, that said he would be hated, so we will be hated. So it shouldn't really come as a surprise. I'm not looking forward to it. I feel sorry for my children. I hope that they don't have to endure it worse than what is happening now. But I do think that it's Christianity now for sure.
Yeah, and Jack Phillips, by the way, is the name of that Colorado baker I was trying to think of.
I think that's what they're trying to do. And you look at all their writings right now, they are getting every group that is inherently against God or Christ to join forces together to create this larger movement. But if you listen to their top leaders, they've openly admitted that they want nothing to do with God or Christianity or the family. They actually don't want the patriarchic family. They've made it quite clear on that. That's another thing they want to dismantle. It's funny that they don't like slavery, and yet one of their top leaders was arrested for sex trafficking. That's slavery.
Right.
So even their leadership has problems, but their leadership ideology opposes everything that we have as a Christian. And it's gaining power because if you listen to Oh my gosh, I just lost his name. Oh, I watch this guy every day. Help me out, Patrick. Who is he?
I don't even know.
Come on, you know who I post his stuff all the time. He's a blog. He's on TV. He an openly admitted Jew, and he fights against all these guys and gives the information.
Is it Ben Shapiro?
Who?
Ben Shapiro?
Prager.
Yes, Shapiro.
Oh,
Yes. He has said so many things, and one of the things that he said the other day is get ready. The only way they're going to win is to get everybody together. All by themselves, they're nobody. But because they're putting all the groups together, even the list that you just read, did you see how many people they had put together to create their group? They put everybody in their group who's against all these things. By themselves, they mean nothing, but now they're creating a coalition. And that coalition is still the same thing that we have always had to fight as Christians. They stand opposed to God, they stand opposed to Christ, and then we stand for God, we stand for Christ, so they're going to oppose us. I think it's getting stronger and stronger every day. You're in California, you're not even supposed to sing in church right now. And the pastors just made a comment to Newsom that you don't get to regulate us. That's not what we're about. And I didn't read the second half of the article, but that was pretty interesting for a pastor to say, hey, we're still meeting. You don't regulate us.
Yeah, you're talking about John MacArthur, right?
Who?
John MacArthur? Is he the pastor you're talking about?
I think so. I have trouble remembering names sometimes. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, because I think he's in Los Angeles. I could be wrong about that, but I know that he recently wrote something that he published online that he talked about how they're not going to acquiesce to the governor's demands, and in Fresno. I live in Sanger. Fresno's about 20-minute drive from here. There was actually a big protest at City Hall with the area pastors about Governor Newsom essentially shutting down Fresno churches. And yeah, we're not supposed to sing in church. We're not supposed to gather. He's got everything closed down. Now that's not to say that every church is necessarily protesting. In fact, the Lutheran churches are actually they're actually kind of I don't want to say getting in line, because it's not like they're subservient to the government or anything, but our Lutheran churches are saying that we're going to keep closed until they feel that it's safe to open back up. And so we've actually been live streaming our services. So not every church kind of feels the same way, but yeah, we had a rather sizable protest yesterday of area pastors at City Hall in Fresno who were basically saying that you can't keep us closed down because enough is enough. Christians need to gather publicly for worship, and we'll take measures to be safe. We'll have people wear masks and we'll have hand sanitizer, all this thing, but all this stuff. But you can't keep us closed down. That's not your right to do so.
Two things that I want to add. One, I remember, and it kind of bugged me that this didn't get more attention. I remember during, I don't know if it was the lead up to Obama's election or it was definitely during his administration, I started noticing that high profile people on the left, Democrats and others, started referring to freedom of worship, not freedom of religion. And that's a very interesting distinction. Because it's the idea that, well, you're free to, what you do over there in private in that building, that's whatever. You can go worship. You can go do however you want to do over there. That's your business. Keep it to yourself. Whereas religion is that's foundational. That's worldview. You cannot practice religion privately if it's not being lived out. To what degree can you actually say you believe it? Right. It affects everything we do. And so it's an interesting shift how that happened.
Yeah. That's the way the left works, though. That's how they're able to affect societal change is,
right.
And, it's just a basic rule of debate. that whoever controls the definitions wins the debate. And this is something that the right, never really learned and has never really gotten very good at. But the left excels at it, is that they redefine things, and that's how they affect social change, because they start making argument, like when they tried to legalize same-sex marriage. It wasn't about it wasn't about giving them special privileges, which is what it was really about, but they were arguing it's about marriage equality. They just want equality and to be treated equally under the law. But of course, they weren't arguing for marriage equality because they weren't arguing for other types of marriage, like polygamy or any other types of marriage. They were just arguing for same-sex marriage. So their term marriage equality sounded good to the average person, because who wouldn't be for equality? But it wasn't what they were really arguing for. But nevertheless, they kind of excel at changing definitions and winning societal support that way. Abortion is no longer killing an unborn child. Abortion is now just choice. If you oppose abortion, you basically treat women like animals, and you don't give them the choice to do whatever they want with their body. They totally overlook the fact that we're actually talking about killing a human child. And so if you oppose leftist ideas, you're a bigot, you're a misogynist, you're a racist, all these kinds of things. And so that's how
you listening the other day to me or something? I got called every one of those things that you just said.
Yeah, well, I have a lot of
argument. They redefined everything I said and then threw everything out there. Whose side are you on again? I'm confused.
I know. I've had a lot of discussions, especially being a pro-life advocate. I have a lot of discussions with people on the left, and this is a common tactic among them. So it just comes from experience, really. So that's how they they never win the argument. They just redefine the terms and win support that way. So,
right, which kind of, the second, back to the main question that was asked about, this canceling, Christianity, they coming after us. There was, and I believe it's been taken down because it really was ridiculous. Well, I forget what the museum was. It's part of the Smithsonian. They posted a thing that was about whiteness, what white culture, defining white culture, and had this list of things. And on that list of things defining what is white culture, it mentioned religion, and it had that Christianity, where did I see it? Christianity is the norm, that anything other than Judeo-Christian is foreign, and no tolerance for deviation from, that concept of God. And they're saying that's whiteness, which is, you put that into the overall worldview. Whiteness is bad. That's the worldview. This is one thing that there's so many people just aren't really understanding. I'll give a little plug. Look on the channel. We did a 2-part series a few weeks ago on critical race theory and what all that's about. It divides everything into oppressors and the oppressed. And if you belong to that oppressor class, then you automatically are the bad guy. You need torn down. Your system is wrong, and everything about it is what needs to be torn down.
Yeah,
and Christianity is put in that oppressor class. And so just by the logic of the worldview, they have to come after Christianity. They have to, because it's automatically part of the culture of the oppressors. And so it needs to be torn down.
Yeah, and here's the interesting thing about that too, is that they call it white, but they really don't mean white. Because they label basically anything that disagrees with them as white. Because, number one, Christianity was started by Jews, and people are quick to point out, Jesus wasn't white. Well, okay, yeah, Jesus wasn't white, so why are you calling religion a white man's religion? It's a Jewish religion that was started by Jewish people. And so it seems to me that they just label anything they don't like as white, regardless of their skin color. It reminds me of a recent comment by Joe Biden on it when he went onto some podcast where he said, if you don't consider voting for Joe Biden, you ain't white, or you ain't black, rather. So he thinks if you're not going to vote for Joe Biden, you're not black. So it's just like they label everything they don't like as white, regardless of what the actual skin color is. And one of my favorite things on that graphic that you're talking about is they actually said that that scientific rational thinking is white also, which was like, how could that not be offensive to non-white people? So
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we've about answered that one and wandered around and answered a few other things related. So let's.
right. Well, I could talk for a long time on, on social issues.
There was something that got posted, and let's kind of change gears here a little bit. I like this one. This is another one we can just go on and on about, and we can plug the Mentionables recent podcast too. Blaster Master 80 asks, how do you feel about the Pentagon preparing to release evidence that they have off-world vehicles not made by us or on Earth? Have y'all been hearing anything about this supposed? I've seen a few things about it where, like apparently, the government actually has like actual evidence of something not of this world, extraterrestrial, whether it's intelligence or whatever you want to call it, and so that's been. I've seen a few things about it. Not much, because obviously we have other things going on in society that the news is talking about. But when it comes to the idea that there are some otherworldly craft or something that's not of this world that the government has and may be releasing evidence of soon, we all think about that.
Is it? I don't know the article. I haven't read it. Is this akin to asking if we believe that there could be aliens?
Yeah.
I don't want to put words in whoever's asking mouth. I'm just trying to get clarification.
Right. I'm not sure exactly. I know that I've heard some mention of things here and there. Haven't really paid a whole lot of attention. He mentions in the comments that it was a recent New York Times article. But just in general, the idea that, what if the government comes out and says, yeah, here, look, we have this evidence of, alien spacecraft.
Yeah. News sites are notoriously bad at relaying scientific information accurately. So I always take scientific articles from New York Times and other. I take them with a grain of salt anyway, because I read articles by Washington Post, which some have colorfully nicknamed the Washington Compost, and these. I'm just very, very skeptical about journalistic sites today. Like I think real journalism is essentially dead, just based on how the journalistic papers and websites work now. But so I always take scientific findings that they relay with several grains of salt. So it may be true, it may not be true. I haven't read the article, but I think back to articles like where they talk about how there's these huge uproar about how NASA has found a planet in some other galaxy suitable for sustaining life, and those claims are always overblown because there are 100 things that have to be true. They might have found a planet in the habitable zone around its star, but there are still 100 other things that have to be there in order for life as we know it to exist. So yeah, they may have found a planet orbiting a star in the right place, but it's very, very unlikely that planet is capable of supporting life. So, you always have to take these with a grain of salt. So I'd be interested to see what they have, if it really is, if it really is evidence of intelligent life on other planets, then, that doesn't shake my faith, because certainly God is capable of creating life on other worlds. And in fact, considering that some scientists have calculated the chance of evolution happening naturally, as so astronomical as to essentially, no one in his right mind would place bets on that odds. So to find that there is intelligent life on other planets, I think would actually be great evidence that God exists, considering how astronomical the chances are that evolution could happen naturally once in our universe. So I would think that it would be actually evidence for God's existence if we were to find evidence for intelligent life on other planets.
Just at face value, not trying to read into it. I personally think it'd be cool, but I'm a Star Wars fan. I've got no issues with believing there's life on other planets, that God could create life in another universe, that there's life elsewhere other than here. But I don't know enough about it to have an opinion either way to cast aspersions or say, oh, it's a lie or this and that. And then when you throw in the Pentagon, it's like there's all kinds of stuff that comes out of the Pentagon and CIA that either half of it turns out to be false, half of it turns out to be true. I don't know. I mean, sure, that'd be awesome. Is it going to give us flying cars like Back to the Future 2? That'd be great. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, we're about 5 years too late for that, though.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's sort of outside my realm of study and everything. So.
I like the idea. It's such a fun topic, but I'm like you, it wouldn't shake my faith, or is there extraterrestrial life? Is there intelligent life out there? I don't know. I have no idea. Could be, could not be. One of my absolutely favorite sci-fi series is a trilogy by C.S. Lewis. The first one is Out of Silent Planet. And the whole premise, I love this premise. It's such a fun book. Is some scientists build a rocket, and they go to, I think it's Mars. They go to this other planet, and the whole idea of the series is that everything in the universe outside of basically the orbit of the moon is still in harmony with God. That Earth is enemy occupied territory. It's just Earth where the rebellion has gone on, and so they get out to this other planet where there's innocent life because the rest of the universe is still in harmony with God. They didn't sin. That brings up an interesting thing because Christ came to die for the sin of mankind. Where does that leave aliens?
Well, actually, Mark, real quick, here's a theological question for you on that topic, because doesn't Genesis teach that when Adam and Eve fell, their sin affected all of creation? How would that affect life on other planets if such life does exist?
Well, the idea, I would say, that the effect on the creation, actually, affected the natural order, but it's the human moral compass, I guess, that was affected, and so just the fact that the things that we typically think about, like diseases and mutations, that sort of thing, genetic abnormalities and all that kind of stuff that come about as a result of that. I don't think that would have an effect on some other intelligent, rational, moral races, rationality and morality, because it's not just that it's like, oh, okay, we ate the fruit and now it's like, here, let's change everything. There's actually something in the eating of the fruit, in the act itself of choosing to disobey God and reach out their hand, that actually skewed the human mind and human thinking, that put us into the position of being against God. Experientially, it's an experiential knowledge. There's things that's like, once you see it, once you do it, you can't unknow it, right? And humanity did that. And what if there's extraterrestrials and they didn't do that? They don't have that experience of rebellion against God, and so they don't have that knowledge of what it is to say, "Forget you, God, I'm doing my own thing." And so they're still living in harmony with their Creator. So Christ's sacrifice wouldn't have been for them. Okay. It's a fun thing to talk about. On that issue, and I meant to share, I thought I did, the Mentionables, the group that Clinton and I are both members of, they've had a series of podcasts, videos on their YouTube channel recently where they have addressed commentary on some sci-fi movies. And this kind of issue has come up in, I believe the last one they did was Contact. I'd wanted to be in on that, but wasn't able to join in. And so, some of these issues have come up. I'd point you to there. I thought I'd put it in the comments so I could share it. If it pops up, I'll put it on the screen. But that's one of those kind of things where if there's intelligent life out there, that still doesn't alter anything about the truth of Christianity. And so, it would be neat and it would be interesting. May have to kind of figure a few things out, but I don't think it would change the truth, the veracity of the evidence we do have.
Two
Yeah.
sci-fi movies that always made my day. One, when the aliens came and they were loading up their ship with humans, they had given a book to everybody, and you couldn't translate it. And finally, a guy translates it, and it's a cookbook. We're the cattle. And then the newest movie that just came out, skip the title. It says she's rising, she's the queen, and she owns planet Earth because Earth was created and we are the cattle. They're technically, it's not as gross, but they're vampires. They use our body parts to refurbish their parts and in a serum kind of thing. So we are cattle. And I like those two thoughts because on one level, we are nothing but fodder. Okay. And so when you think of sci-fi movies, you're like, wow, is that all I am? Lunch for somebody? I don't believe that, but I think we're more than that. I think God's created us to be more than that.
Yep.
So
Yeah, we're more than Soylent Green.
More than Soylent Green. It's people.
Or Soylent Green is people. Yeah. Contact was a good discussion. We also talked about Arrival, and one movie which I wasn't there for the discussion, Paul, which I didn't see because I wasn't there for the discussion because I was out of the state traveling. But yeah, Contact was actually a really, really good movie. I watched it. It was my second time watching it because I was watching it to prepare for the discussion and forgot what a good movie was. So yeah, that actually has my stamp of, because like Patrick, I'm a sci-fi fan myself, and so Contact as a film has my stamp of approval. It raises some interesting questions, and it was written by someone that Christian apologist, a name that comes up now and then, Carl Sagan. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Got another question here. This is a parent asking. It says, my children are fascinated by angel stories. Has anyone on the panel ever had an experience they might share with us? Anyone ever had any experiences with
Where we were entertaining angels unawares?
spiritual beings or awares? Maybe.
Or awares. I do have one experience that I couldn't tell you if it really was an angel or not, but I just got out of high school, and I was with some friends in a car. We had gone to a restaurant with a bar to do some karaoke, and we were on our way back. It was like 1 or 2 in the morning, and our car had spun out, and we spun around several times, and we wound up impacting with a tree and a pasture that was nearby, and none of us were hurt. We all got out of the car, and we were all shaken by the accident. And then just out of nowhere, another car drives up. He pulls over to see if we're okay. Turns out he's a doctor. And then, he just kind of looks us over and makes sure everyone is okay. We'd called someone's parents who was coming after us. And once he realized that we were okay, he got back in his car and took off. And we were kind of thinking, just based on how out of the way we were, the fact that he basically vanished from sight like almost right away, which could have been explained by the dark, but also just how out of the way we were, how he just happened to be driving by at that moment, and we were kind of wondering if maybe that was an angel, or could have just been coincidence. But yeah, that was an experience that we had.
I've never had that I know of an experience. Every encounter with an angel that I hear about, people are pretty aware, but it does say that we entertain angels unaware, so maybe. But one that I can testify to, I don't know of. If we're just talking unaware, I believe that we all have guardian angels, so we've all have, in some way, some spiritual way or some aspect, we've encountered angels, but none that I've had like a do not be afraid. This thing was awe-inspiring. My wife has. That's how I know I haven't. Because of her description of the encounter, it was definitely nothing I've ever experienced. And my daughter has seen something that me and Lindsay could only be like, oh, that's an angel, but I personally have not, that I know of. So that's just where I'll have to leave that, or else I'll be getting into conjecture, and I don't want to do that. So.
I don't know if I've ever truly encountered an angel or an odd moment like that, but when I was in college at North Texas, I had a moped, and a lady ran the stop sign and hit the moped. And I've always told the story like this. I went over the top of the hood and landed on the ground, and there's two angels sitting there on the curb, wings all tattered and messed up, and they both go, "He's heavy. He's heavy." And they saved my life that day. And when I got up, people were telling me, don't get up, don't get up. And I got up and I said, I don't want to be here. This is not where I'm supposed to be. So I guess I'm supposed to tell you all about Jesus. And a skinny, elderly black man in the back goes, "Preach." That's all it took. I was gone. And I preached a street sermon right there about life and death that I just experienced. And are you guys ready? Because I could have died just now, but I didn't. And so maybe I'm supposed to tell you about God. And that's the closest experience I've ever had to maybe meeting an angel that I can testify about, I guess.
I don't know of anything that I would point and say, I experienced an angel. I've had some situations where I'm pretty sure I experienced the other side. I know one for sure, and this is one that really stands out to me. Because we have angels, and the word angel just means messenger, and so it's a messenger spirit from God. And then, those are the ones that work for God. Bad guy's got his angels too. I remember my first time going to Beach Reach, South Padre Island. Dave took us every year. My first time going, spring break, we're heading down and we're loaded up. And if none of y'all don't know what Beach Reach is, it's a bunch of college kids, missionaries go down to South Padre Island, spring break, where everybody's just getting drunk and partying. And the missionaries come with vans and pancakes, and we just spend a week giving people rides, ministering to them, loving on them, sharing the gospel. And no idea what to expect. I mean, I've been told kind of what to expect, but nothing can really prepare you for it. We're going along, and we've driven from Waco down to South Padre Island, and we're driving along and just having a good old time. And we're there. We go through Port Isabella, and you're crossing the bridge, and we're so excited because here he comes. We're laughing and joking and having a good time, and all of a sudden, like hitting a wall. Just a hush fell over the van. Everybody felt it. There was something that we had just kind of crossed a boundary line. And the only thing that I can really describe it as is darkness. Not physical, like darkness as far as, couldn't see anything. But it's a spiritual darkness. There was just like the feeling of evil. The power that was in control of that island was not holy, was not righteous. And we felt the presence that we had just come into to do battle with that week. And it was amazing, terrifying. And so that is the first, whenever you talk about spiritual encounters, that's just the first thing that just stands out so hard in my mind is, because it was like flipping a switch, and just the entire feel of everything just changed, and not for the better. So.
Yeah, well, if you encounter a demon, you know how to tell the difference whether it's the devil or just a regular fallen angel, right? Or if he challenges you to a fiddle match, you're probably dealing with the devil.
If he challenges you to a fiddle match, It's the devil.
Okay, sorry. I'm pretty good
Why I
with
stay out of
bad
Georgia.
jokes. Right. Yeah, I do see in the comments that the Magic Man 1986 had a similar story to me regarding an angel encounter. Just wanted to mention that I noticed. For some reason I can never write any comments in the regular comments section on these, so I just wanted to mention that real quick. So.
Okay. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions that have specifically been submitted, but there is one there in the comments that kind of popped up. It wasn't directed at us. It was a conversation two people were having, but we can jump on it if y'all would like, since Clinton took us there. The issue of same-sex marriage being wrong. Right, it got mentioned about the redefinition of marriage equality, but this is something that culturally it almost seems like it's a done deal. That everybody's decided, okay, well, yeah, same-sex marriage doesn't matter who you want to be with. Love is love. Marry whoever you want, and so let's throw the question out there. Make sure that this video could possibly get banned or never monetized if I ever wanted to.
Speaking of cancel culture.
Yeah, there we go.
How was it framed? I didn't see it.
What's that?
How was the question framed? I didn't see it.
I'm just trying to remember, because I just in passing was watching, because there was a conversation between two other people about.
Yeah, actually, I could. Yeah, I guess I could throw this out as a plug, because I don't know if you're familiar with the works of Ryan Anderson, Robert P. George, and Christopher Tollefson, but they actually just released another version of a book they wrote called "What Is Marriage? Man and Woman: A Defense," in which the three of them, who are very, very smart conservative thinkers, wrote a defense of natural marriage, which is marriage between just one man and one woman. They don't use religion; they use completely secular reasoning, and they also use some legal arguments as well to defend the position that marriage is only between one man and one woman. And so they just released it's not an updated version or a second edition, because it's basically the same version as the version they released before. It does come with a new postword, I guess you could call it, written by the four of them. It's only like 4 pages long. So if you already own the first one, might not be worth picking up a second, the newer one for just that alone. It's just them talking about kind of what's been going on since the first one was published. But essentially, yeah, I could take us through real quick the moral reasoning for natural marriage if we have time for that.
Yeah, if you want to just.
Okay, because I noticed someone saying that our reasoning would probably be along the lines that it violates God's law or something, and there is that aspect of it where homosexual acts, not homosexuality itself, because obviously just being attracted to someone isn't a sin. It's what you do with that attraction that makes it a sin. So homosexual acts are forbidden in Scripture, and there are several places in Scripture, even from the mouth of Jesus himself, which states that marriage is just between one man and one woman. Jesus said, have you not read that in the beginning God created the male and female, and for this reason you'll leave your father and mother, be joined to your wife, and that kind of thing. So it does violate God's law, but we can also argue, without even appealing to religion, that marriage is between one man and one woman. And the reason for that is because what is the purpose of sex? Well, the purpose of sex is procreation, and that's because if two people, a man and a woman, engage in sexual intercourse, then there, of course, it is the way that pregnancy happens. That's the way that the human species is procreated, is through male and female sexual reproduction. Male and male sexual encounters don't have that. Female sexual encounters don't have that. But male and female sexual encounters do have that. That's what's unique about the male and the female, is their ability to procreate. And so the reason we have marriage is because that helps regulate the male and female sexual relationships, because a woman can only get pregnant once, and then for 9 months she has the baby, and then she can get pregnant again after that. But a man, if he has sex with multiple women, can get multiple multiple women are pregnant and sire multiple children. And so this is a way to sort of ensure that a man is domesticated and isn't going around making multiple women pregnant. Now, we also see that in the marriage vows, that marriage is we have an expectation of exclusivity, where there's only one partner in each marriage, and permanence, where we say, you take the woman and the man takes each other to have in sickness and health, and for better or worse, richer or poorer, as long as you both shall live, till death do you part. So there's also an expectation of permanence. And so the only reason we would expect exclusivity and permanence is if marriage has a special tie to children. And so that because marriage, aside from domesticating the man, also provides a stable environment in which to raise children. And so that's why we would say that marriage is not just what two people do when they love each other, because obviously brothers and sisters love each other, mothers and sons love each other, friends can love each other, but just because they love each other, that doesn't necessarily make a marriage. So what's unique about the male and female sexual relationship is that it has the possibility of children. In fact, the male and female sexual relationship is the only relationship on earth that's actually enhanced by children, not hindered by the presence of children. So we would say that marriage then is not, there is an element of love, because obviously the husband and wife should love each other. But marriage for love is actually a fairly recent invention. Before the 20th century, marriages were essentially, chosen by the parents. The children didn't really have a say in it. It was, there's a word for it. I'm blanking on the word. But essentially, they were the marriage couple were essentially chosen by the parents. And so marriage for love is actually a fairly recent invention, because while love should be present, that's not the key thing for a marriage relationship. It's that sexual relationship which causes children. So we would say that a marriage then is a comprehensive union with a special link to children. It has that special link to children because of the male-female sexual component, and it's a comprehensive relationship because the man and the woman, because they can sire children, they form their lives around each other and around the possibility of children. And so the whole possibility of children means that the male and female must now orient their lives around the possibility of having children, because that's what male and female sex does. And so in a very real sense, the man and the woman become one flesh. And that's not just a metaphorical way to describe the sexual relationship, but it's actually very much a physical reality. Because for one person, any of your bodily systems, such as your respiration system, your digestive system, all of these systems can be just done by one person. But the reproductive system is unique in that it requires two people in order to function as it's meant to function. That's the man and the woman. It requires those two. So when they act in concert by having sex, they are literally becoming one flesh, because now the male reproductive part and the female reproductive part are now working in tandem in a way that it's supposed to, whether it's designed by God or it was adapted by nature. Either way, it's the only one of our bodily systems that requires two people. So in a very real sense, the man and the woman become one flesh. So this is why we would say then that that marriage has a special arranged marriage. Thank you, Carla. So this is why we would say that the marriage relationship has this special link to children, is because of the sexual component. And this sexual component then is missing from two men and two women. So not only is marriage not needed, because there's no possibility that the two will create children by their sexual union, but it also just doesn't make a marriage, because if that component to have children is missing, then a marriage can't happen. In fact, the state itself has actually said that if you're not able to have children, like if you're infertile, that is not a reason to annul the marriage, because the male-female relationship is still procreative in type, even if the capacity for procreation is blocked by some external factor, disease or injury or something. But the ability to copulate must be there. So if a man is, for example, paralyzed from the waist down and is unable to have sex, the marriage cannot be there's a term for this too. Marriage cannot be consummated. You cannot consummate the marriage, and so therefore the marriage is not legitimate, and therefore the marriage can be annulled because of the inability to have sex. So even until very recently, even the state recognized that the capacity to have children is necessary for a marriage. So that's kind of a little bit complicated. It's not a simple reason for why we would say a marriage is only between one man and one woman, but those are essentially the reasons that we would say that marriage is only between a man and a woman. So there really is no such thing as same-sex marriage. In fact, even in the Obergefell decision, which the Supreme Court legalized, unjustly legalized same-sex marriage across the board in the United States. Even one of the justices who wrote on that said, the concept of same-sex marriage is younger than the iPhone. For all of human history, marriage has only been seen as between a man and a woman. Even in homosexual affirming cultures like the ancient Greeks, it was still recognized that marriage was only between a man and a woman. So those are really the reasons, the philosophical reasons why we would say marriage necessitates a man and a woman.
Yeah, I've even heard some LGBT, activists, saying, "Why are we fighting for marriage? That's something those heterosexual people do. That's not what we're about." Right. Yeah, the way I would approach it, and that's also good. The question, why is, why would we say, why do we, affirm that same-sex marriage is wrong? It's not, I think, quite as simple, cut and dry as because it violates God's law, though that it does. I mean, he flat out says, no, don't do it. But for a lot of the reasons you just went into, that it just so obviously, as a Christian, first of all, this argument wouldn't work with secular people, but as a pastor addressing followers of Christ. God designed the world a certain way, and we should seek to live our lives according to the way that God designed the world. I mean, you read the book of Proverbs, and it has all this stuff about, hey, here's some wise things, here's some unwise things. And it all has to do with, because God designed the world and designed us to work a certain way. And that includes marriage, that includes society, that includes the family, right? The marriage relationship. Human beings are designed to work a certain way. And whenever we function things within God's design, that's the way we're supposed to be doing things. When it comes to the issue of same-sex attraction, same-sex so-called marriage, there are so many worldview assumptions that are built into the issue that before we even get to the argument about marriage and whether or not, male and female, male and male, female, female, whatever, there are already so many foundational assumptions about things, going back to the idea of, marriage for love. I mean, marriage for love. Marriage being, for love, that's about 5 minutes old, right? We just thought that up a few decades ago. I remember whenever I was young, I was single. I was talking to an older gentleman about a girl that I liked, and I mentioned something about, being compatible, and I'm not sure we're compatible. And he goes, compatible ain't got nothing to do with it. You just choose to live with them, and the compatibility comes about. And it's just this mindset that it's not that you have to feel it right, or it has to, kind of have that first, that you make a commitment and then develop love. But like that doesn't even enter the radar to people who are saying same-sex marriage, they should do it because love is love. And, if you love someone, you should be able to get married. It's like the whole view of humanity and human relationships and what marriage could even possibly be about is so foreign. The idea of same-sex marriage to a biblically based worldview, it's, might as well say the sun is rising in the west. It just doesn't fit.
Yeah, and those are really great points too, Mark. Yeah, like you said, this whole concept is kind of foreign because our culture doesn't understand marriage. And, it didn't start with just the legalization of same-sex marriage. It started with the advent of no-fault divorce, that people started to lose sight of what marriage actually is. And it started to be more about love. It started to be more about, if you no longer love your spouse, you should just divorce them for, that's why it's called no-fault divorce, because originally the only reasons the state would allow divorce were for things like abandonment or infidelity. And I think there might have been one other, but there were some very strict guidelines that you could only divorce someone under. But now, because of no fault divorce, now there's this idea that if you fall out of love with your spouse, you just divorce them and then find someone new. But like Mark, I reject this concept of compatibility and this concept of soulmates because, well, Mike didn't say soulmates, so maybe I'm overstepping my bounds there. But I reject the concept of soulmates because, excuse me, I think if you find someone that you're sufficiently compatible with, it can feel like you were created for each other. We know that Eve was created for Adam, but I don't know if there's anything in Scripture that says that, in any other case, a man was created for a woman was created for a man. I think it's just if you find someone that shares your interests, that you like, you consider marrying that person.
No, Clinton, I'm cutting you off.
Oh,
I'm cutting you off. That's the American model view. That's not the biblical model. The biblical model is boom, two together, one male, one female. That's it. Your parents picked them. You don't get the choice of liking them. But I hate the American model. I don't know if you do or not, Clinton, but the American model is so ridiculous. And maybe it's the one that's opened the can of worms for all these things anyway. It started the nth degree slope.
So that's not really what I was saying. I was saying that if you find someone like that, it can feel like you're made for each other. But I don't think that you necessarily were, because I think that any two people can make a marriage work, but you have to be willing to make it work, and you have to be willing to abide by the vows that you give. No fault divorce. You're essentially not living up to the vows that you made during the marriage ceremony. So I think any two people can make a marriage work, but it requires work. It's not just something where you fall in love with each other and then that's all you need to make a successful marriage. That's not all you need. Then that's why the divorce rate is so high. It's because people have lost sight of what it actually takes to make a successful marriage. And that's one of my kind of concerns too, is that successful marriages don't really run in my family. So I'm a little nervous myself to pursue marriage because of that. But I've done a lot of reading on it, so I think I understand well, based on what other really smart people have written about marriage. I think I have a pretty good understanding of marriage and how to have a successful one. But of course, there are a lot of things that you can't read in a book that go into making a successful marriage too. So I still always have those reservations as well.
Okay, Patrick, anything you wanted to?
Yeah, I might be the dissenting voice, not in if homosexual marriage or gay marriage is okay, but I think love is very central to marriage. I think this idea that marriage by God is a medieval concept of parents choosing, I don't know that was godly. I think when you read the story of Boaz, you see a man who deeply loved a woman. I think when you read the story of Joseph and Mary, and Joseph was going to quietly let her go, and an angel came and said, no, stay with her. And then he not only took Mary in, but took a pregnant teenager woman in who was against culture, and then took her to Egypt and took her to Israel and guarded and watched over this family. I think that's deeply love. I think the issue for us is what Mark mentioned earlier, where we have this love is love mentality, and we don't define what love is. And the definition I use is that love is willing the good of the other. Love is not an emotional, flowers, butterflies, everything is good. Marriage is hard. Love is hard, though. The cross was not easy, but Christ did it for love. The early church gave their lives for this good news, the gospel, out of love. Paul, 1 Corinthians 13, it's read at every stinking wedding that I've ever been to almost. It's love. I think love is very central. And just to flippantly say, well, love doesn't matter, I think, well, God is love. And I think God deeply matters in a marriage. I think love deeply matters. I think we have to redefine what we mean by love. And love is, look, when tough times come, you stick it through because you made a vow and it's a sacramental thing. When tough times come and your wife gets sick or you get sick or this and that, I think that is love. And I guess to the issue of why it's wrong, and this definition of love is because we haven't done a very good job of defining what love is. And I like that definition of willing the good of the other because it covers a lot of things. So like an alcoholic, I'm not going to say, well, he was born an alcoholic. It's been known that that's genetics. Drug abusers, that's been known that that's genetics. Because I'm a Christian and I want to will the good of that other, I'm still going to step out and go, man, we got to get some help. That's not right. And I think that we get cornered into this philosophical argument too easily where it's like, we should start with the definitions we know. And the definition we know is that God is love. And out of that came marriage. Out of God's love came creation. Out of God's love came Eve being created for Adam, who I would argue is the climax of creation. She's the only created being that is not created from dirt. She's created from the image of God and the breath of God. Adam was even created from dirt. And so it only makes sense then that who gives birth to the images of God? Women. So I like the talk of children and stuff because we're in a culture where children have been so devalued and family has been so devalued where now pregnancy and stuff looks like it's a burden, and it's not. It's like, man, that's the greatest thing that God gives us. Two become one isn't just a sexual act. Two become one, and creating one person is the greatest example of two becoming one. And I think it's okay to say everything that y'all said about God's law and moral laws. I mean, that's all good. It's all great arguments. But I do think that we shouldn't get away from love. I think that we should hammer down on love and say, look, no, man, Christianity is love. God is love. And at the center of marriage is love. But this is what love looks like. Love isn't flowery and just first dates and kisses and it's morning breath, it's bad houses, it's arguments, it's financial stress, it's sickness, it's health. It's all those things we say in our vow, but it's you sticking through it. That's what love is. Just how Christ sticks with us through our good times and bad times. Why? Because he loves us. Not just because he died on the cross, but because he has a deep, profound love for us. And it's that deep, profound love for us as a husband, all of us are men as husbands, that we should then try to reflect to our wives a deep, profound love for our wife that says, through it all, baby, I'm here. We're going to stay together because God is love. That's all I have to add. I'm sort of...
Patrick, I loved everything you just did. It was awesome. Did you ever read the book that said love is a verb? It's an
No,
action.
I haven't.
Yeah, it's an action.
That's
We
deep
will
stuff.
our love. And when we will our love, the way you just described it, that's what makes us better.
I
We
agree.
will our love.
That's a DC talk
Yeah,
song.
so don't misunderstand.
Just DC talk.
So don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not saying that love is unimportant. I'm just saying that that it's not the central thing of marriage. And when I say love, I'm talking about that warm fuzzy feeling that you get, because obviously that
Right.
goes away at times. I agree with your definition of love, that it's to will the good of the other. And so you can make a marriage if you have that kind of love, whether or not you have these warm fuzzy feelings. And so I'm not saying that it's unimportant, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't love the person that you marry. But we can also look at other examples in Scripture, like I believe it was Hosea, who God said, "Look, I want you to go marry a prostitute." So you can make a marriage work even if you don't necessarily choose the person that you want to marry. And so this whole idea of of marriage for love is a recent invention. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't love the person you marry. It just means that society has taken a different view of what marriage is, and has slowly eroded it through things like no-fault divorce and the advent of same-sex marriage. That's really what I was saying. And primarily what I was doing is I was trying to give a non-religious argument for same-sex marriage, because obviously, there are religious things we could talk about, like that marriage is a reflection of Christ's relationship with the church. So, there are a lot of religious things that we could talk about too. I was just giving a strictly philosophical defense of natural marriage because a lot of times when we talk to people, they don't ordinarily take Scripture as a source of authority that they agree with. So I was primarily just giving a philosophical defense there. There are a lot of theological things we could talk about, and I definitely agree with what you said about love too. So that's all I was really just saying was all. So
Okay. Good stuff, and I think that's a good thought to end on. We're a little bit over time, so gentlemen, thank you. Greatly appreciate it. Patrick, would you close us in prayer, and then we'll call it an evening?
I didn't hear you, Mark. What'd you say?
Would you mind closing us in prayer, and then we'll call it an evening?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Let us pray. Holy God, we thank you for tonight. We thank you for discussion. We thank you for questions. We thank you for being able to come together as a community, as a group, and ask tough questions. We thank you that we can see things a little different, and it's okay, that we can still walk away friends, brothers, that we can walk away in peace with one another, God, because you are the Prince of Peace. God, we do indeed lift up this world. We ask that you would use us to be your instruments of peace, be your instruments of love, be the salt of the earth and the light of the earth, God, as you've called us to be to one another and to strangers even, God, that you would just use us. Holy Spirit, I ask that you would empower us to use our gifts, that you would empower us to raise us up, empower us to raise others up, and empower us to show the love of Jesus to every stranger that we come across, God. May we always have an ear to listen to you. God, I ask that you would forgive us of our sins indeed, that you would go with us and guide us, that you would always help us do your will, and that you would cover us each with your blood as we go on our way homes or as we travel this day, God, that you would just continue to lead us, guide us, and direct us. And we do indeed pray that your guardian angel would watch over us. We ask all these things through Christ's holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Patrick.
All right.
Thank you, Clinton.
And we're out.